Hey, it's Tandy with Common Ground Alaska. Today, I thought it might be kind of fun to talk to folks who are just thinking about getting started or kind of excited to maybe kind of dabble in the homestead lifestyle, but just aren't sure where to start. We have a lot of people come out to the farm who um, they might come in and they might say, well, we want to buy like a 5-year-old apple tree, which we don't even offer, but and they want 40 of them, and they want people who are wanting to start really big, and that is so amazing and so commendable, if you have time for that and if you have the finances. But honestly, living the homestead lifestyle is never a sprint. It's always a long, arduous um, experience. And it has to become a part of your life rather than just being something that you do suddenly. For most people, it needs to be something that you work up to. So what I kind of wanted to talk about today was just some ideas that I had if you're just getting started, or if this is just what you're wanting to, what you're kind of considering and you're just not sure what to do. So I just want to say I grew up with this lifestyle, but oh my goodness, especially in high school, I resented it so much. I wanted nothing to do with living in the country. I wanted to, as soon as I was out of high school, my plan was to move to Seattle. I wanted to live in downtown Seattle. I wanted to live right next to the market. I wanted to be able to go, like out my door and walk to Pike's Place Market and get whatever I wanted for dinner and walk home. And I ideally live above a bookstore, so that was just what I had envisioned. And obviously that isn't how life turned out. And I'm so glad. I'm so grateful for the roots that were planted in my, just in who I am, through my grandparents and my parents and my family, to want to definitely live as closely to the land as we possibly can. So I have lived off grid 3 times. I don't know if I do it again or not. If I did it again, I'd do it different for sure. The 3rd time we lived off grid was here in Alaska, and we didn't have water. Both times in Oregon, when I was younger, we had a way of getting water. We had gravity fed water. And that makes a big difference. Not having water really wasn't any fun. So if I was going to do it again, I definitely have water. But so I've lived off grid. We've 3 different off grid experiences: 2 living with my parents, and 1 being the parent, and living off grid with Jean and the older kids. And so it's kind of fun reminiscing, and there's definitely advantages and things that we loved about living off grid. And we'll definitely go into that another day. But one thing I wanted to talk about, a couple things. I think that if you're going to live a homestead life, you're going to have to get creative. That's the first thing. My dad was not, he was creative. My dad was ingenious. There wasn't, if a vehicle broke down, he could fix it. He and his brother Jerry were probably the most ingenuitive people I know. Gene is extremely ingenuitive too. His ingenuity just is a little different. And so I felt like I had the best of both worlds, because I had, my dad's brain and Gene's brain, and there was nothing that they couldn't do. Right. So one day my dad picked me up at school in a Toyota Corona. I didn't even know that was a car, but it was a Toyota Corona. And I asked him, I said, what was this? And I got in, and the floorboard was like rusted. You could see the road through the floorboard. I was like, what is going on? He goes, I bought us a generator. I did not have any idea what he was talking about at the time, until we got the car home and he started pulling it apart, and he built a generator out of the engine of that car, because our generator wasn't powerful enough for everything that he wanted to do. So that was one time, of just one of the examples of my dad's creativity living. This was specific to living off grid, but I just think you need to be creative, and you need to be willing to wait on some things. You need to be willing to learn, always learning. And you just are going to kind of have to sometimes do without, or do, makeshift some things. So but here are my first 3. This is the first part of getting started in the homestead life. these are my first 3 suggestions. So suggestion number 1 is to start with what you love and learn more about it. So for instance, if you love indoor houseplants, then maybe a container garden would be really fun in the summer. And let me tell you, that does not mean you have to start small. And your containers do not have to be even store-bought and small. You can plant, I've seen what some people do that's just ingenious. They'll take an entire bathtub. I mean, that might be a little bit redneck, but they'll take an entire bathtub and plant in there. Or your containers can be most anything. Be careful that they haven't had chemicals in them. Sometimes people will want to buy drums and turn them sideways and plant stuff in there. And you want to make sure that there haven't been a bunch of chemicals in there, because that'll leach through and maybe kill your plants. So, but if you just thoroughly love, raising houseplants and planting things in containers and kind of having that, less wild and rogue, garden, then that's something you can totally do. And you can start small. It can totally be small. If you had a container of lettuce outside, then you're going to be eating lettuce all summer, because you just keep cutting it off. It keeps growing back, and it's a great way to start. Another thing is, if you love drinking kombucha, or here's what I think is fun. If you love drinking soda pop and fizzy stuff, we haven't drank soda pop in years and years and years and years, but I do love something fizzy once in a while. And so if you love drinking stuff like that, whether it's kombucha, or if kombucha is a little strong, there are other alternatives that don't have to be strong, and your own homemade stuff certainly doesn't have to be strong. So, learn to make your own. But here's the warning for making stuff like that. If you start with kombucha, pretty soon, it's like the gateway drug. Pretty soon you'll be learning about water kefir, and then you'll say something about kefir, and they'll say, "Oh, do you do milk kefir or water kefir?" And you'll say, "Oh, there's a milk kefir." So then you'll dig into that, and then next you'll be making kvass. And then for me, because we love kombucha, but it's just a little bit stronger than what we prefer. So I read somewhere about Jeun, and so we started making Jeun, and so I actually learned to make my own SCOBY. I was the only person that I know with a Jeun SCOBY until I started sharing this around. That's been fun. But, and even here's the crazy thing. One of these days, you might even make your own apple cider vinegar and your own fire cider. And you know what's crazy? It won't even be scary or weird, because you've already learned some things about fermenting drinks. And it just is like the next progression. So if you think that you're going to learn about making kombucha, I promise you're not going to stop there. But it's really fun to get started. And, so if you love, especially if your kids really love soda pop and you don't want them to be drinking soda anymore, you can make like vanilla cherry, especially water kefir. You can make like in a vanilla cherry flavor, or Jeun. Because they're a little milder, they're a little more mellow. You can make ginger ale, you can make cream soda. Oh my gosh, the possibilities are endless, and this stuff is healthy. It's so good for them and good for you, and it's fun to make. And so I would say, if you are interested in, if you love the show Forged in Fire, then learn about forging. You might want to do some blacksmithing, whether you make knives, or you could make, my husband does everything now, but the learning curve was pretty steep. And with a brain injury, it was a little bit more difficult to do, but he just took his time and puttered away at it and did what he was able to do on any given day. And but you can make hooks. He made hooks to hang on my wall for my cast iron skillets. He is sort of working on making something that it's going to hang on my wood stove, and it's going to have arms that swing out that we can hang maybe gloves on, and the towel, because we don't have a dishwasher, so we always just dry the dishes on it, or dry the dishes on a towel, and the towel is usually wet, so that needs to be hung up. So he's working on making something like that. And there's all sorts of things that you can do with blacksmithing and building. So get this is where it gets really, really fun. someone might say, I can't afford to build myself a forge. Oh my gosh, I get it. I couldn't afford to do half the things I wanted to do, but there's ways around it. And this is where the homesteading mind takes over, and I need everything to be the best of the best and like name brand and stuff. That's where that idea, we just kind of drop that side of our brain and we say, okay, how can I do this? And that's, you really have to have that mindset when you want to live this more self-sufficient lifestyle. How can I do this? That needs to be the question that you ask. So our forge cost almost nothing. I don't know anything about it. My husband built it with my son, and they came up with all sorts of fabulous ideas, and it works. So the one thing that did cost some money was his anvil, because they're so heavy and we had to have it shipped. And so, you know, there's things that you have to do, but if you only have to buy an anvil as opposed to, you know, buying a forge and all the pieces to go with it, then that always helps too. So find something that you're interested in and pursue that. And that's it. It doesn't have to be everything all at once. Another thing is, the other thing is, even if it's not something that you necessarily enjoy doing, or you don't know that you enjoy doing it, but it's something that you enjoy the results of. So I've seen where we've definitely had people who have come to the farm to buy our apple trees. And they say it's cheaper to buy an apple tree than it is to keep my family in apples. Well, I love that. That's awesome. So now, instead of going to the store to buy apples for their family, their kids go outside and pick it off a tree, and you can preserve those apples. So you buy 4 apple trees, and then you've got apples for fresh eating. You've got applesauce, you've got apple pie filling, you've got all sorts of things that you can make from these. You can make your apple cider vinegar from the apple scraps if you make cider. It's or if you make anything, if you peel your apples for your pie and your sauce, then you can use the scraps from that to make vinegar. It's incredible what you can do, and that's just with 4 apple trees. So you've had fresh eating, you now have fresh eating apples. It costs you what, a couple $100. You've got fresh eating apples, you've got applesauce, you've got apple pies and apple pie filling, you've got your very own vinegar, maybe some cider in there. I mean, it's really cool. And that doesn't mean, just because you're interested in living a more sustainable lifestyle, it doesn't mean you have to do it all at once. Find what you're going to enjoy and dabble in that for a year or for some time. And the other thing is, it doesn't have to just be one thing. Here's why. If you're learning, say, kefir and kombucha, say you're wanting to learn how to ferment drinks, there's nothing saying that you can't learn to garden at the same time, or that you can't learn to maybe do sourdough at the same time. It's not like you have to like one by one learn these skills, because that's just not how life works. But keep it enjoyable. It makes me so sad when I see people jump all in and then they're not being fulfilled and they're not getting any joy from this lifestyle, because I have not found anything more fulfilling than homesteading with my family. I guess nothing shy of knowing that I'm saved by the blood of Christ, right? That's a big deal. But there's just something about living this lifestyle with my family that makes it it's everything. So that brings me to point 2, and that's do something your family will enjoy and make it a family change. So it's okay if you want to pursue container gardening on your own and your kids don't have any interest. That's fine. Or kombucha. You want to learn how to do kombucha on your own. But also another thing that you can do is see what your family would be interested in and have them join you in something. So maybe you think maybe your kids would really enjoy having chickens. Well, having chickens is a lot of work. So maybe start with 5. I'm just saying. Having chickens is a lot of work. And so do it as a family, make it a family affair and have fun with them. And, you know, start with chicks and learn how to raise the chicks. And especially if you're looking at meat birds, please don't start with 100. The learning curve is too big, and it's just too much, and it can suck all the joy out of it. Start with a few, learn. And what's really fun, what I love to hear is gosh, I did that and it wasn't as big a deal as I thought it was. I can't wait for next year. So that means when your end of your season is like that means you're going to do it again. If at the end of the season you say, I had so much food in my garden that half of it went to waste, and I didn't know what to do with stuff like the kohlrabi that I had left over. And we only could butcher 20 of the chickens because we didn't have time to do the rest. So then the rest just got cold. And I mean, I don't know what you do with extra chickens, but that's just because you're not going to be encouraged for the following year. So keep it slow, make it something your family will enjoy. Some other things that are fun to learn as a family together are leather working. My gosh, there's so many things you can make from like, belts, and you can make purses. Seriously, I'm not even going to try. The options are endless with leatherworking, but that's something you can do as a family, and there's something for everyone. You could, of course, learn gardening. You can learn to knit and crochet with your kids. It's just whatever, that you think that your family would enjoy. Dabble in that too. So find a hobby for yourself and a hobby for your family. Now you've got two new areas that you're learning that are bringing sustainability to your family. Isn't that cool? So the other thing that I wanted to kind of stress the importance of is to understand your goals and make a realistic timeline with those goals. If your goal is to, I know people who do this. I wish we were closer. Every year I'm going to say we're going to get closer, and then I don't know. But I always say we're gonna grow or locally source 95% of our food. I know people who do it in Alaska. Please don't make that your first year goal. Unless you have an unlimited income, and you can buy all the stuff and you've got the time to preserve it all, that just isn't feasible. So maybe you could say that you want to grow or locally source some fruit this year. So you buy some fruit trees and you make an area and you fence it. And it might take you 3 years to get to the point where you're sourcing and growing your own fruit. Well, so this year you start with fruit, you get some apple trees, some plum trees, some honeyberries, of course, because they're the most popular thing ever, and some Saskatoons and some cherries, and you put a few out there. Well, you realize maybe that's enough for your family to eat, but the following year, well, it takes about 3 years to produce, but then you realize I'm going to need more if I want to preserve some. So while in the process, while you're growing this little orchard area every year, you might say, you know what, I've got this going on, but I think I could plant a vegetable garden too. So now you're learning to vegetable garden, and you might start with like broccoli and cauliflower and potatoes or something super simple. And, but you have to know your goals and understand them and make a realistic timeline. Otherwise, it's really just going to make you crazy. And I just see so many people give up because there's no joy in it anymore. So let's say your goal is to stay out of the grocery store and to grow or locally source healthier foods. Simple. So find out who your local farms are. See what other people offer that you can afford, that your family loves. And remember, this is another little tip. If you're just starting gardening or, any kind of growing things, whatever it is, really think through what you guys actually love and eat. And those are the things you need to focus on. You can add kohlrabi later if you've never heard. Last year was the first year I'd ever grown kohlrabi, and we loved it, and we put it in all of our ferments. But I've been gardening my whole life, so it's okay. You don't have to do every single thing at once, but find out what you can source, and then the things that you can't source locally, maybe try growing those things. So let's say that your family just really loves green beans. Green beans are your favorite. Well, they're easy to grow, and they're a little bit expensive to buy. And there's not a plethora of them available grown locally. So that might be a great thing to start in your garden, is some green beans. So but understand your goals, make sure that you stay consistent with your goals, and make sure they have a good timeline. Another idea for a goal is if you just want to bring your family together, you want to get everybody off the screen and doing projects together. Well, if that's your main goal right there, then let's look into projects that your family would enjoy. What about chaga hunting? What about foraging? There's things that you can forage year round. You can do chaga and old man's beard in the winter. Obviously, there's tons of stuff in the spring, summer, and fall that you can do. So you can be foraging year round. So if your family enjoys being outdoors together, maybe get everybody a pair of snowshoes or a pair of cross-country snowshoes would probably work better, and take up foraging. That's it. Start there. And Alaska, oh my word, the bounty that Alaska offers is incredible. The more I dig into it, the more shocked I am on how much we can live on just with what's already here. What Alaska already offers that we don't even have to plant or cold therefore, excuse me. So maybe you're on some pharmaceuticals, or someone that you love is on some pharmaceuticals and you want to get them off. So it might be a good time to learn herbalism, learn some things that you can do to help your family be healthier without the pharmaceuticals, or, yeah. And if your goal is independence, self-sufficiency, that kind of thing, I have two ideas on that. Number one, there is nothing wrong with being self-sufficient. I think that is awesome. And as a believer, I believe that my family needs to be able to take care of themselves so we don't become a burden to someone else. But at the same time, I don't want to stop there. So our goal is not to become self-sufficient, but to help build a community that is community sufficient. I don't have to know and do everything. Here's the deal. Here's the truth of it. Most of you probably heard this story before. We used to grow bees. We don't now. That's something that we have other people bring their bees to our farm because it's an amazing place to have them and it's an amazing place to raise them. So they bring their bees to our farm. They get to, they pollinate and help do the work that the wild pollinators do. Excuse me again. And they get the benefit of, we have stuff that blooms year round. Most of you who have been out here know a lot of people will spray their orchards and, keep it all just only grass. There's no weeds or whatever. We don't do that. We have a lot of clover that blooms year round. We've got everything. We do keep it nice and neat. But at the same time, we want those wild plants to be growing and give food sources for the bees, even when everything else is done blooming. So I'm okay with that. I totally and completely know that if things fall apart and we can't get bees up here, we may not end up with bees on our property. And that's okay. And so, but I know beekeepers and I know people who do this, and I know if I need honey, I know where to resource my honey because I know a lot of beekeepers. So if you don't have room, you live in an area where you just don't have room for an orchard, that's okay. We have a U-pick farm. I happen to know a pretty great place that grows fruits and berries. So maybe you don't have room to grow your own meat. That's where we were for a long time, or we didn't have the resources to grow our own meat. We're kind of getting back into it now. We used to grow all of our own, and then the kids moved out and life just kind of changed a little, and now we're coming back. But that's okay. Excuse me. Find a source for local meat. Find people who are raising chickens and ask if you can have some chickens, and offer to help. Maybe on culling time, when it's time to start butchering chickens, offer to come help, spend time. I'm going to give this as a freebie. I wasn't going to talk about this today, but I feel like they go hand in hand so much. Part of learning to do something is learning from people who are ahead of you in the game, right? Or ahead of you in the race, or however you say that. People who know more than you about what you're trying to learn are the ones you want to learn from. And oftentimes I see where people are like, who's going to teach me? And I actually have had conversations with one person who's like, no one ever taught me to do this. I'm like, what are you doing about that? Like, what are you doing about it? Seriously. So if you want to learn how to make milk kefir, I say this because I've done milk kefir for several times, but I want to dig in deeper. I'm trying to learn a little bit more, dig in deeper about milk kefir. So I'm not just saying, oh, who's going to teach me this? I'm boots on the ground. How can I help you? What can I do for you to help you make your kefir? Can I come over and can I observe and can I help you make your kefir? Can I bring you some of my fresh berries to use in your kefir? I mean, that's how you build community, and that's how we learn stuff. And don't wait for a farmer or just another fellow homesteader to reach out to you and ask to teach you. Reach out to them and offer them a service. If someone does something that you think is really, really awesome, offer to help them with it. And that's gonna, not only are you gonna get, you're gonna learn that skill, right? You're gonna get hands-on experience. And while you're doing it, when I'm teaching people to do things, I'm not just teaching them what to do. I'm also talking about what I didn't do or what I've learned not to do, the mistakes that I've made. Like, it's such a richer experience than I laughingly say, just watching a YouTube video. Here we are. But it's just really, really important and then you build community. And then the other thing so now you've learned everything there is to learn about milk kefir, and now you offer grains, say, to other people. And someone says, well, I'd love some milk kefir grains, but I don't know how, I'm not sure what I'm doing. So then you can just remember, oh my gosh, I was there one time. And so then you can say to that person, listen, if you want to learn to make milk kefir, you are more than welcome to come over on Tuesday afternoon. It'll take us about 3 hours, and I'm going to make milk kefir, and I'll teach you everything that I know. I think that that's just super valuable, and working together and getting to know our community and our people and loving on each other and teaching is really, that's just key to it. And but truthfully, and the bottom line is, it's about the community. It's about learning to live life together. And I think that's a skill that a lot of us don't have anymore. One more thought to have is I wasn't gonna talk about all these things, but I can't help it. I just want you to remember, you don't have to do everything. So I touched on this a little bit when I talked about bees. If we couldn't get bees, we have a ton of just natural pollinators here. Everything would be fine. We prefer to have honeybees, as few of them here, because we get honey, right? So, and we love honey. We don't really use sugar for anything much, except in some of our ferments. So I like to have honey around, and we use a lot of it. So I love the byproduct of honeybees. But I know that we have enough pollinators between, oh my goodness, we just have tons of pollinators here between like the wild bees, and we have those, what are those great big moths? I don't remember what they're, hummingbird moths. We have tons of those. So just remember that just because you want to start the homestead lifestyle, it does not mean that you have to grow this year. You have to grow all of your own vegetables. And at the end of the season, you have to learn to can or ferment or freeze all of those vegetables right now. This has to be done this year. And in the meantime, you're planting an orchard and you're learning to make sourdough and all the things. It just isn't necessary. But also remembering that you don't have to do it all. But it's important that you build a community that can. So maybe blacksmithing isn't your thing, but wouldn't it be cool if you knew somebody who does blacksmithing? What about maybe growing animals isn't your thing? Maybe, but if you know someone who grows animals and you're on their list and you have a rapport with them, then you get to be in that group of people who gets, your protein from a local farmer. And it's a matter of building that community and being that community for other people. So I think that's all I wanted to say for today. This is the most rewarding lifestyle that I can possibly imagine. The fact that my freezers are full of food that all was raised, I would say, I don't even know, major percent, probably 90% of what's in my freezers. I would say 90% or maybe more of what's in my freezers currently is grown in Alaska, whether it's grown by us or grown by other people. I have my ferments from all of my vegetables from last year. I have My canning shelf, if you haven't seen my canning shelf, it's amazing, but I am 50 years old and I finally have my first canning cabinet. So just know it doesn't all happen at once, even for people who've been doing this for a long time. So, but these are things that you have to learn, and they don't have to be learned all at once. Keep the joy in it, because I don't want you to give up. And it really is it's a joyful experience. And your family is going to be so blessed by it. Just because you started small and you took the time to enjoy them and to enjoy yourself in the process. So if you have any questions, I'd love to hear them, and happy homesteading.